You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. As we rocket through the final days of 2021, we tend to take stock of where we've been, what we've covered over the previous 12 months, and what a 12-month cycle it has been. Last week, we discussed the cameras released in 2021, and at the end of today's show, we're going to mention books we featured on the previous shows over the past year. But before we do that, we're excited to profile a new book and the story behind the production of this book, which is titled Among Peers, the United States of Young Photographers. The book's cover says it all. Recent works by 110 photographers ages 9 to 20, encouraged through education and mentorship. And we welcome two of the collaborators responsible for the book. Michelle Dunn Marsh is a past guest on the show. She's co-founder and publisher of Minor Matter Books. Minor Matters is, and I quote, a collaborative publishing platform highlighting underrepresented voices in contemporary art, recognizing that significant art and ideas may stay on the fringes without the support of a community. How Minor Matters supports that community and funds their book projects is fascinating, and we look forward to Michelle telling us more. Also joining us today is Lauren Wendle, the founder of Lauren Wendle Incorporated, a photographic arts consultancy specializing in print and online magazines, trade shows, and educational conferences. Lauren is the former VP and publisher of Photo District News and trade show director of Emerald Expositions, the folks behind Photo Plus and WPPI. Most recently, Lauren was the president of the Lucy Foundation, and in that role, she helped bring this book to light. Welcome, Lauren, and welcome back, Michelle.
Thanks so much, Alan.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you guys here. Lauren, perhaps we can start with you. And before we get into the origins of the project, can you tell us the story behind the book's incredible title, Among Peers, the United States of Young Photographers?
Well, I feel like the incredible title was Michelle's creation. So, Michelle, maybe you could comment on the title?
Sure. I would love to. And again, thanks, John and Alan, for having us here today. I was actually just pulling out the word lists of some of the other titles that we had been coming up with, because the creation of titles for a book is a challenging and important thing. And with this project, we really wanted to emphasize community and people coming together, but also recognizing the individuality of the young photographers themselves. I actually solicited the feedback of some teenagers because, as it turns out, I am farther away from that generation than I realized.
Yeah,
Tell me about it.
So it was like, wait a minute, I'm going to take a little pause and talk to some people who are actually of this generation. So I was like, do you want to be young, or do you want to be youth, or do you want to be teens? Which of these various terms feels good to you? And so the children of a couple of family friends were actually hugely influential, both in the title and the cover of the book, I will say. So the words themselves, I mean, obviously the idea of seeing, of peering. So I was trying things like states of seeing and see the people and united focus. And I really loved, I love wordplay. You can blame my alma mater, Bard College, where actually Lauren also attended for that. But I really wanted to kind of hold seeing and the idea of young people coming together, but also that the book really originated not only out of the young people who don't know each other, who we're bringing together in this book, but that it came about through a group of professionals who are also peers. Lauren and I's relationship over many years is what led to this actually existing. And so the title itself is very all-encompassing. And then the subtitle, The United States of Young Photographers, we've just been experiencing so much division, so much about what makes us different, and sometimes that's positive to talk about what makes us different, but it really was getting me thinking about what do we hold in common? And so for these young people who are all educated in photography through these various important programs, to kind of bring them together and imagine, of course, the United States as a geographic existence and as a culture, but that we all exist in different states of being, and certainly we've learned that the last couple years. So to bring those words together in a manner that was a little open ended, but got at what is quite an ambitious undertaking through this book.
I think it'd be worth mentioning at this time that let me give you a list of the groups that these students have come from. It's First Exposures from San Francisco, Las Fotos Project in Los Angeles, Literacy Through Photography from Houston, Young Arts from Miami, Youth in Focus from Seattle, and SALT, New York City SALT. So those are the actual organizations that these photographers came from.
And it represents the whole, I mean, obviously not the whole country, but we get the idea. I mean, it certainly brings together East, West,
and South,
North and South. There you go.
Yeah.
But I guess my one thought about the title and having to name some podcasts over the years, I do this too. It's almost two really good titles together. So I was wondering if at one point was that part of it? All right, let's just put them both there and be happy because it just works so well. And the United States Young Photographers, I just love that. It seems like it's something that can continue, forever. And we'll ask that question later. But maybe you could jump back and talk a little bit. I mean, was it really just a conversation between the two of you that started this, and you decided to look for programs that you could feature, or, Lauren or Michelle, either one of you, chime in on how this kind of.
I guess I could start. The Lucy Foundation, I was working full time for them, and their mission is to celebrate master photographers, promote the appreciation of photography worldwide, and support emerging talent. And beyond that, Michelle and I share many values and had many, many long talks during the pandemic about our lives and what we could do and what would be meaningful to us. And mentoring and passing it on has always been central to what we've both have done in all of our positions in photography, whether it was asked of us or not. And we both wanted to, in whatever we did during the pandemic, support young, underrepresented photography and the youth organizations that have helped thousands of photographers find their voice and continue to do so through the pandemic with very limited resources. Michelle and I really wanted to honor the vision of the youth in America and just those behind the scenes who work so tirelessly. In the book, we also celebrate 6 Lucy master photographers. We've included them in the book with quotes and images that would resonate with young photographers and bridge the gap of generations.
One of the things of the word mentorship is coming up a lot, and one of the things that we've all gone through in the past over a year now, going on 2 years almost, is working from home and working isolated and not necessarily in the same groups, not collaborating. For younger people right now, that is a really, really heavy duty thing right now. Is that many people who are successful, they're successful because somebody who had the experience took an interest in them, encouraged them, talked to them, gave them constructive criticism, and basically was a mentor. And that is very difficult right now in the environment that we're living in due to the COVID situation. And this is perhaps one way of reconnecting to a certain extent. Again, it's not the same thing as daily being together, but it's part of the story.
Absolutely. And, at the Lucy Foundation, we had previously done gallery shows with young photographers. We taught classes in high schools, and those are all things that we could not do during this time period.
Sure.
And, in part led to what can we do?
And I'm wondering, had the Lucy Foundation supported some of these organizations around the country? Because I know a lot of them are, we've spoken with the folks from NYC SALT in the past and some graduates, they're operating on a shoestring, and my follow-up to that is, do you know how much work they were able to keep doing during the pandemic? Did they all stay operating? Did they switch to online formats? And any thoughts on that subject?
Yeah, John, they did all stay operating, and that was something, as you mentioned, and we continue to reiterate, most of these organizations really have small staffs, have tight budgets, and to everything that Alan was speaking to, they provide that sense of personal encouragement beyond knowledge that you're transferring, just the notion that there's someone interested in you who cares about you. And to have that have to change so suddenly and move from being something that people were doing in person to how do you do that online? Who has access to a laptop? Who has Wi-Fi? That it really it brought out a lot of issues in our culture about things that we take for granted. And so all of these organizations continued to work with their populations. And it was something that definitely came up in our conversations that when Lauren and her colleague Alice Dyson at Lucy Foundation and I, began reaching out to people, that we, were clear with them that we wanted to highlight them. And we also wanted to be respectful of their time and value their time because of how much work they were doing to stay in contact with the young people that they exist for.
And Michelle, your publishing strategy at Minor Matters is pretty unique as far as I know, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. But did this book fall into that strategy? I mean, did the two of you look at this as a Minor Matters book in the sense that you wanted to get pre-orders and raise money that way, or did you look at it a little bit different, given that you were reaching out to these organizations and you wanted to support them as much as possible?
To be honest, John, we were ready to do whatever it took to make this project go forward. So
it was a combination, right?
Yes, for sure.
I mean, how we started the project, because we couldn't count on people buying the quantity that they would need to buy to have it published. So we raised money through two sponsors, Adobe and Sony, to jumpstart it.
Okay, wonderful. And a lot of these organizations, I imagine, had histories with maybe some of these companies that you mentioned or other organizations that donated?
The Lucy Foundation had a history with Adobe and Sony. So we leaned on that, to be honest.
Gotcha. And who did you reach out to first when you went to the different organizations? Who did you have histories with and who were new to you?
I had a relationship with SALT in particular because I live in New York City, and SALT had, I'm also on the Eugene Smith Memorial Fund, and they had won an award. And beyond that, when I worked at Photo District News, I hired a graduate from SALT because in addition to mentorship, SALT does professional development with the kids that they have in their program. And I hired a designer who turned out to be a designer from SALT, and her work ethic was amazing, and it was a great experience.
That's great. Oh, wonderful. And we'll get a bit to the specifics of editing and getting the images after a break. But I wanted to ask Michelle a bit. Were you able to pre-sell a lot of these books? And how much, you don't have to give me specifics, of course, but how much of a part of the strategy was that?
Thank you, John. That's a great question. And just to say that a number of the organizations I had also worked with when I was working at Aperture. And so really most of them were organizations that between Lauren and I, we had some previous contact with, which definitely helped in getting them to say yes. We also offered an honorarium to each of the organizations. And I think that's really important to mention. When I was running a nonprofit organization, a lot of people would come to us with great ideas, but they didn't really recognize that we were trying to deliver on our own mission. And even if it was a project that was related to that mission, it took extra time. So I do think that our understanding and support for the organizations by saying, we really would like you to be involved, and we're going to offer you a little something back in support of your organizations and your time. Yes, our model is based on pre-sales, and we set a goal to determine that it's not just about the money. It's about determining that there's an audience for the project, right? That we're not killing trees to make books just for our own ego, but because there's an audience of people interested in receiving it. And so, as Lauren mentioned, in this case, we had some financial support, but we also did need to flesh out that audience. And because it was the summer of 2021 and parts of the United States were beginning to open up a little bit, people were not spending quite as much time in front of their computers as they had been.
Book sales were actually up dramatically during the lockdown. People started reading again.
Oh, yes. It was fantastic. I mean, sales in 2020 were off the charts.
Sure.
And most of 2021 has actually been surprisingly good for us. But launching this specifically in the summertime, I think, and it launched on its own as opposed to with another title. So I was, of course, thoroughly behind this project and thought it was brilliant. But it was a little slow. And I will also say that part of that was, again, we came into this, with a high level of integrity around wanting to support the organizations, not tax the organizations. So we weren't asking them to promote the book for us. The goal of doing the book was to promote those organizations. And so that made it a little bit more challenging. But in the end, a deadline was set, and it's one of those moments of trusting your own model. People do pay attention to deadlines, and people rallied.
At what point, how many pre-orders do you need, say, for a book of this type that makes it a go? What kind of number are you looking at, if I may ask?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alan. We started when Minor Matters launched 8 years ago. We started with 500 copies. During the pandemic, we dropped that to 400 copies, just because it was the one thing we could do to try and acknowledge complicated circumstances in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk when we come back about the shift in paper prices this fall and what a dramatic impact that's had. So, yeah, whether or not I'll be able to hold at 400 copies is a question for the year ahead. But that has been that's around that $20,000 to $25,000 production budget has been pretty consistent for us.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, I just want to have an idea of what kind of number we're actually talking about, because again, these are abstracts, I would say, to me and probably most of our listeners when it comes to publishing, and these are things you have to take into consideration. We're going to take a short break, and we come back more with Lauren Wendle, Michelle Dunn Marsh, and the making of Among Peers, the United States of Young Photographers. Stay tuned. A question that I have is that I'm going through the book, and the book is really a wonderful book. I have a few comments I'd want to make about a couple of questions. We'll wait a little bit on that. There are a lot of photographers out there, especially a lot of young photographers. I would say everybody who has a phone understands photography. Again, being a photographer, being a young photographer is not as rare as it used to be. How did you come around selecting the photographers and the photos from all of the programs? What was the criteria? Because again, you got a large source of material that you had to go through here.
Indeed, it was a large source of material. Lauren and I spend a lot of time talking about, should there be a theme? Should there be this? Should there be that? And again, noting the challenges of the last 2 years and trying to make this as easy as possible. So we did not set a theme. We asked the organizations to solicit work from their constituents, and we did that for 2 reasons. We did that because our publishing agreement is actually with each organization. Publishing the work of underage photographers is a very sticky space. And so we made the decision to essentially form licensing agreements with the organizations and let them speak with their specific photographer constituents and manage that in the way that was appropriate to the organization. And so
you probably had to chop down 40 trees just for contracts otherwise.
Well, I mean, yes.
Yes.
Seriously.
On a pure timing logistics area, and Lauren was a huge help with that, having so much, business experience. It was like, if we try to license with all the photographers and get them to sign a piece of paper and get their guardians to sign a piece of paper, this will never happen. So by working with the organizations, they made the first pass of images. They chose or solicited which of their photographers were interested in a program like this. And so they did the first pass for us. They had the opportunity to submit up to, what did we say, Lauren? 25 young people per organization.
Right.
That's a lot.
And then they could submit between 1 to 5 images per person.
So in a sense, you actually gave up a lot of the creative control about, again, we all have ideas of what makes a good photograph or what makes a valid photo or a photograph that's worthy of being in a book of this type. And again, you show 10 pictures to 10 people, you're going to get a whole bunch of different responses. So you actually had to give up a little bit of your control in order to make this thing happen.
Well, yes and no, Alan, because I am a little bit of a control freak, as came out in the discussion with Joan Lifton. So what we also set was, it was very important to us to be representative. And so every young photographer who submitted would have a minimum of 1 picture in the book. That was something that we set straight out. And that notion of representation was very important to us.
That's great.
But I didn't limit myself to only choosing 1 photograph by each photographer.
Okay.
So in some cases, a photographer may only have submitted 1 photograph, in which case that was an automatic in. But in the case where a photographer submitted 5 photographs, if 3 of them were fantastic, I used them. And so that, I think, is very important to the strength of the book as a whole, is that flexibility.
Gotcha. Okay. One of the things that I noticed, just as a side remark, I was kind of astonished at how much black and white there was in this book because, again, every camera that you get these days is a color camera. It used to be, if you wanted to shoot black and white, you put black and white film in, but now it's all color. Everything, there's no decision to be made unless you consciously say, no, I want this to be a black and white image. I don't know how many younger photographers investigate black and white as much, but I did notice in this book, there's a lot of monochromatic photography in here, and it was refreshing to see.
I agree completely. And I do also want to point out that, as Lauren has mentioned, these are not just kids with phones.
Right.
Some of these pictures were taken on phones, I'm sure. We didn't ask them what equipment they were using, but all of these young people have been formally educated in some way in photography through these programs. And to be honest with you, when I look through the images in this book, I think it shows.
Did you get a sense if any of the photographers are shooting film?
I don't know for certain, but my guess, based on the files that I got in, my guess is yes. I mean, my guess is yes. And also just knowing the programs, like most of these programs do continue to teach darkroom photography. And I have long fantasized about putting together a STEAM curriculum that meets state requirements for science, technology, engineering, art, and math that's exclusively photography, because you can. You can. And so the fact that many of these programs are still, teaching kids the chemistry in the darkroom, and how to work with light meters and all of these things that, of course, is automated on many cameras today, but that they're not just teaching them to use it in an automated fashion. I think it really shows in a lot of the images.
And you had mentioned, or we had read, that there's a photographer as young as 9 involved. Did you get to speak to that young photographer, or know the story behind their work, or where they come from, which city?
Lauren's laughing because we used to do weekly updates, and every week I would be like, I still haven't heard back from this particular organization, and I'm still trying because I really want them represented in the book. And that young woman is the sole representative from Literacy Through Photography PhotoFest, and I actually got to hear her speak on a Zoom presentation that was their kind of end of quarter celebration. That program is something that Wendy Ewald started. It is one of the first programs developed for youth in photography in America. And it was super, super important to me that we honor that history.
I'm real happy that you mentioned Wendy Ewald because, her legacy is in all of these programs, and we were really happy to have her on the program last year.
Fantastic.
But you want to mention some of the other people that were involved, some of the other masters, because there's a few wonderful photographers, needless to say, and a musician who's also a photographer. And did you reach out to them directly to ask them to be involved and to produce a quote, or were these quotes that they had already made in other contexts?
The photographers we chose were all Lucy masters.
Right.
So they were part of, the Lucy Foundation. They were all very well known. And what we did was we did pick a quote that we thought would resonate with young people. And then we asked them for an image, or we offered them the choice of changing the quote.
Gotcha. I love Dwayne's quote, needless to say.
I know. I love Dwayne's quote too.
Yeah,
Well, and it was also just such a wonderful moment as they began to say yes. It really just felt so affirming and validating to the project as a whole that such illustrious people wanted to participate in this, and that says a lot about their respect for the Lucy Foundation, and their love for photography.
Nobody said no. Everyone we asked said yes, which was amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah, and I like the way it punctuates the book too. It's a nice little, I don't know what you say, a little pause as you're going through the United States of young photography, little road stop. So my next question is, what stage are we in with the book? And you had mentioned earlier a bit, Michelle, about the difficulties and the pricings of paper and other obstacles that get in the way of these great projects. Can you let us know where the book stands? Have some of the young photographers seen at least a PDF? And when can the book be available?
Yes, those are all great questions. The organizations have all received PDFs of the final interior. The book has printed. I am awaiting by the hour, by the day, a copy of the F&Gs. So that's a set of first printed sheets that are folded in the order that the book will be and usually trimmed to the final size. That will be the last approval process before the book goes into the bindery. And once the books are bound, these days, international shipping is taking about 6 weeks from Europe, depending on the port that it goes into. So we're anticipating the book will ship in February at this point. I had, of course, desperately hoped that it would be out before the end of the year. And we had to just face the realities on this and another Minor Matters project that just wasn't going to happen.
Right, but pre-orders are available, and
Yes.
I imagine that everyone, hopefully everyone in their communities and interested in photo education will take a look see. But yes, I can imagine the difficulties right now in terms of shipping and just the the insecurities and what's going on in the business have been difficult.
It has been challenging. I mean, the paper prices went up 30% between September and October
Of 2021.
of
Wow.
2021.
Before we kind of wrap up, is there anything that is coming from Minor Matters or has come in the past year that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, we produced 4 books in 2020, 3 of them through our traditional process, one of them well, The Unconcerned Photographer with Charlie Harbit.
Right.
We had 3 books in pre-sales this year, and all of them did move forward, although only one of them was physically delivered. That was a rather unusual book by Nicholas Galanin called Never Forget. So it is an accordion fold book of a single work of art. It has a 9.5-foot photograph, so I'm pretty proud of that. That is definitely the largest photograph I've ever published, for sure.
Wait. Hold on one second. Describe this, please. You have to.
Yes. So the project is conceptual work by Tlingit artist Nicholas Galanin, and it is a recreation of a sign based on the Hollywood sign that was installed in Palm Springs, California, that says Indian Land.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
You may have seen it. It's gotten an enormous amount of coverage. So Nick came to me this time last year, very deadpan like he is, and said, I think this is going to be big and we need documentation. I think we should do a book of this. And I said, I've never done a book of a single work of art. I just don't even really know how that works. Let me think on it. And I came back to him and said, well, scale is significant in this project. So what if we did a book where you could basically recreate the installation through the book at home or wherever the book can go? And he was excited about that idea. So we based a prototype on this because, of course, the piece hadn't been installed yet. And there is a 9.5 foot photograph that Lance Gerber, who was the photographer for Desert X, was very gracious in making. I kept sort of being like, nope, I want it this way. Nope, the dimensions of the book are this. Nope, we need this. He was, can you shoot the sign from the back as well for the other side? So it was a pretty extraordinary project from a design and logistics and conceptual perspective.
I just have this whole thing in my head that you get this little postage stamp size dried sponge with a picture on it. You put a couple of drops of water and it just explodes into this 9-foot portrait. We got to look into this.
I like the way you think, Alan. Now I'm going to have to come up with another project that would warrant that.
Well, let's talk. Okay.
Yeah. So
I've got time on my hands.
Yeah. I mean, so that's, it's an important book, but it's also from a photography perspective, those of us who appreciate those things, it was quite an extraordinary feat. And then our other two books, Among Peers, of course, being one, we also, I don't know why it's so hard for me to talk about this still. I have to work on this. I wrote a book this year.
Oh, congrats.
I wrote a book about my life in photography. It's called Seeing Being Seen, A Personal History of Photography. It has 36 photographers in it. So I think this was the year of community, for Minor Matters. If I have to think back on it, we did two books that were really about group projects and honoring legacies and bringing multiple generations and people from different viewpoints and backgrounds together. So my book, the earliest photograph in it is from 1905, an Edward Steichen, and the most recent was 2019, which is the cover photograph. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time thinking about histories.
You really spent your quarantine well, Michelle.
Yeah.
It sounds like you came out of it with some wonderful projects.
Well, I have Lauren to thank because our weekly phone calls kept me motivated.
Thank you, Michelle. I would also mention that the proceeds from Among Peers are going to be split between the organizations.
Oh, thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
that's great. Yeah. And of course, we will link, in our show notes, the book itself, Minor Matters, and we'll try to link each of the organizations themselves so people, if they're in the area and they're interested, they can check them out.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's been wonderful talking to you guys. The book looks terrific. Again, we saw a PDF of it. Great photography, a good essay that goes along with that as well. Websites, things of that sort. Where can people catch up with each of your work and the books that you're doing?
Yes, www.minormattersbooks.com. Among Peers is available for sale there, among other projects. And again, that book will come out in February 2022, but we do have other books in print that are currently available.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Boy, it sounds like the future, 2022, but it's a few weeks away.
I know. It's incredible.
That's all great. And anything else? Instagram or anything of that sort people can go to, or that's pretty much it?
Yes, we do have an Instagram account and a Facebook page that are also under minormattersbooks.com.
And Lauren, what about yourself? Anybody wants to check up, follow up on what you're doing, things that you're up to?
Well, I would just ask for the LucyFoundation.org, which was part of the book project.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that too will be in our show notes.
Thank you.
So again, it's all trackable.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you. All right, we're going to take another short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of our favorite books from the past year. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show is by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For links to gear and more information on today's guests, check out the show notes in your podcast app or visit our homepage on the B&H Explorer website and join the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And now, back to the show.
All right, we are back, and today we were talking about a new book, and this past year, it turns out we talked about a lot of books, and it's been a really good year for publishing, and some wonderful books have come out. I know my library is a lot richer than it was a year ago at this time. John, you want to go through your list? You put together a list here, and I'll throw in my thoughts along the way, too.
Sure. I did put a little list together of the new books that we spoke about this year, and it turns out we had about 14 or 15 guests that had books to discuss. And I'll run through the list, and please mention your favorites along the way.
Sure.
Chronologically, In the Shadow of Genius, The Brooklyn Bridge and Its Creators, which was made by Barbara Mensch. And this was, her images that she took of the Brooklyn Bridge over the years, and also included a lot of historical research about the building of the bridge. So it was this kind of hybrid photo history book that I thought was really interesting.
And she's also working on the process of working on a book on the Fulton Fish Market, which is pretty wonderful too. I've seen some pictures and some excerpts from that, and it's a wonderful book.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I love those photos for sure. We also had Ralph Gibson on, and he has obviously many books, and he does bookmaking workshops. And his new book was called Sacred Land, Israel Before and After Time, which I think you really liked.
Yeah, I have that one in my living room on a music stand. What's beautiful about it is that every page is photographs of old and new, and just phenomenal imagery of the balancing between the pictures. The pictures are wonderful, and the way it's laid out is really good. It's a very strong book. He hasn't lost his touch at all.
No, it's beautiful. We had Gulnara Samoilova on the show, and she published Women Street Photographers, which was a compendium of a lot of different photographers from around the world, obviously women and street photography, and there's just great work in there. I mean, and it's based on the work that she does on her Instagram page, which is also called Women Street Photographers. Next, we had Todd Webb in Africa. The full title is Todd Webb in Africa, Outside the Frame.
Yeah.
The authors are Amy Bessier and Aaron Hyde Nolan, and it also was a product of the Todd Webb archive, and we had those guys on the show.
I was totally unfamiliar with his work, and this book blew me away. And then afterwards, I found another book about his work in New York City in the late 40s.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. The guy's had an amazing eye. And he knew how to use a camera.
For sure. Yep. We had Kim Beal on, and she's a professor out at Stanford and a photo historian. And her book, Good Pictures, The History of Popular Photography, was a topic for a show. And we talked about this book, which is kind of profiling or looking at popular photography trends over the course of the history of photography. Pretty interesting stuff. It
was an interesting perspective. I mean, because I'm familiar with a lot of this stuff, and a lot of them I just never looked at from the perspective that she brought it out, and it was it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and recommend her Instagram page also, because she collects photo manuals and how-to books.
Yes,
going back 150 years. It's really interesting stuff.
Which reminds me, I promised her I have a box of them I wanted to send to her. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, send them out. She always and I bet she'll mention it on her Instagram page, because she always talks about the people that sent her stuff, and it's an interesting site. The next one is not really a book. But it's Greg Constantine's continuation of journals. It's called the Seven Doors Journals.
Yeah.
And he's put out two editions this year, at least. And this is self-published. It's documentary and photojournalism on migrants and detention centers around the world. It's really important, powerful work. And he's out there doing it on his own. He's funding this with the help of some grants and his own pocket money. So we want to give him a shout out. The next book we spoke about, and we're very pleased to welcome its author, Mona Kuhn. It was her book, Mona Kuhn Works, and I wouldn't really call it a retrospective necessarily, but it was looking at her career and some of the major series she's done over the years.
Very powerful image maker.
Yeah, great. A few weeks later, we had Arthur Drucker on and his book, City Hall, Masterpieces of American Civic Architecture. Really nice book.
Yep. Photography's great. And if you're into architecture, it's a sweet book to go through. Definitely keep it.
Yeah, and a lot of interesting history, too, about the building
Yeah.
of some of these city halls around our country. We followed up a week or two later with Sally Davies and her book, New Yorkers, which is portraits of New Yorkers in their apartments, often cramped, sometimes luxurious, very interesting, and that conversation was a lot of fun.
The other thing she should have picked at least an interesting city.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
all right, I live in New York. I'll work here. Nah, go find a place that's interesting.
Totally. Yeah. No, and the people that she chose were great too. Just the whole cross section. David Rothenberg, we spoke to him this past summer, and he put out a couple of books this year. The one we seem to speak of mostly was called Landing Lights Park, and it's these abstract images of airplanes landing out at LaGuardia Airport, another New York book, and which followed itself with our little New York swing. In the summer, we had Meryl Meisler, and we spoke about her book, amongst other things. We spoke about her book, New York, Paradise Lost, Bushwick Era Disco, and that book's been getting a lot of attention this year, so check it out. A couple of weeks ago, we had Todd Bigelow, and we talked about the Freelance Photographer's Guide to Success, Business Essentials, which is a different kind of book, needless to say, but that episode was very popular. And,
you need to be sobering one. We always talk about all the artsy stuff and everything else and creativity, but if you don't have the business end, go flip burgers. Seriously, it's like this is an important thing too. It ain't as much fun as taking pictures, but you got to know the business, and this was a good episode.
Very, very much so. Yep. Followed that with Captioning the Archives, a conversation in photographs and text by Lester Sloan and his daughter Isha Sabatini Sloan. And that was, again, kind of a hybrid. I mean, it looked back at his work throughout his long career as a Newsweek photographer, but it also had conversations with his daughter about the photos and about the times. And it's just it's a real kind of, I don't know how to say it, but kind of a beautiful piece.
It's very enriching. Listening to him speak about back in the day when because he was right in the middle of a lot of things, and hearing his perspective on stuff. And again, the interchange between him and his daughter was just beautiful. I mean, I have a daughter, I get it, and you could tell there's a love there, there's an understanding, and a communication that you only get from a father and a daughter, and the subject matter they had was just wonderful. Terrific. It's a trifecta.
There you go. Yeah. Two more books to mention. We had, I'm sorry, let me try this again.
You're sounding like me, John.
So the two more books to mention really quickly. We had Hugo Marin and his book Portrait of an Artist, which was mostly interviews with trailblazing female artists.
Yes.
And it included his instant photography of them, a bit of portraiture mixed in. And today we talked about Among Peers, the United States of Young Photographers. And we can't really speak we can't speak too highly of that book. It looks to be wonderful.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So yeah, a lot of interesting books, and of course, many books came out this year that we haven't spoke about, and a few that were from last year we just received this year. So it's been a great.
We have one or two coming up in the next few weeks, actually.
Absolutely, yeah, that's true. We're going to have Joe McNally talking about
his new book, which is I'm about 2/3 of the way through it. It's a treat. This book. He's not only is he a photographer, he's an extremely good writer.
Yeah, it's going to be a great
Very good.
Yeah. So looking back over the year, any of the ones that we spoke about stand out as favorites for you? I have a couple.
I'm going to say photographically, the Todd Webb in Africa and the Todd Webb photographs of New York City really got Mona Kuhn's work is just stunning. Landing Lights Park I enjoyed because being a New York City boy, I get all these juxtapositions of weird imagery, and it was caught really, really well. And did I say City Hall? I mentioned City Hall, that one too. I love the book. Again, I'm into architecture, and the book was done well, and some great stories to go along with buildings that I'm familiar with, but never knew the backstories to.
There you go. I would probably throw. Well, let me mention Good Pictures, the history of popular photography, because I really like that kind of stuff. Not necessarily monographs, but looking back at kind of the down and dirty aspect of photography,
trends and cultures and how it affected us.
Yeah, regular folk stuff. And well, The Lester Sloan book I found again, you mentioned it, how the father and the daughter work together.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with Mona Kuhn. I mean, it's not necessarily the type of photography that I gravitate toward, but I just thought it was a beautiful book. And when you really sit down with it and read it and go from series to series, it's the work just grows on you. And talking with her about it and about her process was wonderful. She was a great conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Yeah, but a lot of great books, needless to say, and look for them all over the course of our shows this past year.
There's our listing of books that we spoke about this past year, and I didn't even realize we really have spoken about a lot of books, but that's what's been happening the past year. A lot of people are putting all of their stuff into print, and there's something nice about holding a book, because when the power goes out, the book still exists, and that's what I kind of always loved about print. And we're going to be talking more about books in the coming weeks. We mentioned Joe McNally has a new book. We're going to be speaking to him in the next week or two, and we're also going to be having our year-end wrap-up, talking about all the things photographic that were wonderful and exciting, that at least in our opinion, the past year. And that'll be coming up the next few weeks. Meantime, if you're not a subscriber to our show, you know what to do. Just head on over to wherever you snag your favorite podcast and sign up. It's absolutely free. Just think, you can fire up every episode of the B&H Photography Podcast the moment it goes live. Life does not get better. And you can always find this on the B&H Explorer website and on the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group page. My name is Alan Weitz, and on behalf of John Harris and Jason Tables, thank you so much for tuning in today.